Hi everybody, Alex Deploy here from Expert Forex, and in this video I'm going to be talking about the entry methods used by the RSI envelope trader. Now there are really good entry methods that have been added to this EA, and on your screen you will see the 5 methods. They are in the drop down menu in the entry method selection of the input menu, and as you can see there are 5 alternatives. Now firstly I must state that the RSI indicator on its own is a fantastic indicator and gives really good signals. You can trade it on its own. Then the envelope technique is a magnificent system, because essentially, if you logically think about it, if you have an envelope where the price is predominantly inside the envelope, in other words, it only comes out 5% of the time, so 95% of the price action is contained in the envelope. So when it comes out, it's actually quite an important event, and that's why those trading signals are so special. They don't happen that often, and it is a very good entry technique on its own again. So when we look at the 5 alternatives, and you can see the first one is the RSI overbought and oversold alternative. That one uses the RSI obviously on its own. Then you have the RSI overbought and oversold alternative combined with the envelope system, which really takes 2 fantastic systems, combines them, and the entries that you get from that is really superb. Then the third one is the RSI hook system, which is on its own also a very good system. And then you have the RSI hook system plus the envelopes. Again, really a strong combination. And then the last one is envelopes on their own, and as we will see, those are profitable in their own right. So I'll go into these techniques now in a little bit more detail to show you how they work. I'll be using trades to show you how they work. So I'm going to be explaining the techniques in random order. So on your screen, you will see the RSI hook and envelope system, and you'll see a transaction that has resulted from this particular system, and I'll explain it in a little bit of detail. This system requires the RSI to make a strong hook, as well as the envelope system to go outside of the envelope. Now, as you can see, the price went outside of the envelope, came back, and on the open of the next candle, the transaction was entered. At the same time, below, you will see that the RSI has made a strong hook and hook back. So those are the entry conditions for this selection. That's how that selection works. And as you can see, this was a successful trade in that was the initial trade. There were actually 2 top-ups at that level. There was a number 1 top-up and number 2 top-up happened at that level. Number 3 happened at that level, and you can see how number 3 dragged the stop down so that all the open transactions had that as a stop, and it eventually hit the target, and was all 4 these transactions were successful. And if we look around at the trading account, you can see all 4 of the transactions being nicely successful down at the bottom here. And you can see if we had only used the initial transaction, we would have made $70. But having used the top-up technique, we have more than doubled our return on this particular transaction. Right, so let's move on to the next technique. Right now on your screen, you'll see a trade taken when the strategy was to use only the envelope system. So the envelope system basically says that when the price goes outside of the envelope, the EA will enter on the next candle open. And over here you'll see the price going through the envelope and nothing happened. Now why is that? That is because this strategy also has a time of day limitation, so it will only trade in the hours specified to it. So in this case, that must have happened when the hours were not valid. Here we have a valid hour where the envelope where the price crossed over the envelope and then opened on the next candle, and there's the particular entry. So what then happened is it was then topped up once, topped up twice, topped up 3 times, and it then cashed in at the top here, cashing in all 4 of the transactions in one go, creating a nice positive transaction. And if we look at the trading account, you can see those 4 transactions being cashed in. Here's the initial one, the first top up, the second top up, and the third top up, all being cashed in at the same time on the account, giving it a doubling the gains that would have been made if only the initial trade was traded. Okay, the next signal we're going to be looking at is the RSI overbought and oversold signal. Now what that signal says is that when the RSI reaches certain levels of being overbought or oversold, the EA will create an entry at that particular level. This also goes hand in hand with the time of day setting. So it's only when certain levels are reached at certain times of the day. Now on your screen you'll see a transaction that was created. The RSI went to a certain level. You can see there were previous levels higher than that, but that particular level at a certain time of the day is a good reversal signal. So the EA entered that particular trade right there. There it is. It then got topped up once, twice, and 3 times, and a lot later the target was hit for all 4 of the transactions. So this entry basically says if the RSI reaches a certain level at a certain time of the day, then enter the trade. And that is the RSI overbought and oversold entry. And down at the bottom here, you can see the result of that particular trade. Again, really nice results, doubling the amount that would have been achieved if only the initial trade was entered into. So the next signal we're going to be looking at is the RSI overbought and oversold when used in conjunction with the envelope signal. So the entry conditions have been met for this particular buy signal on your screen. Let's have a look at it. It has gone through the lower envelope, and at the same time, if we line that up, it has gone extremely oversold. So those are both buy signals, and that's what in fact happened. A buy was entered into. Now look at this. It didn't actually work out too well. It went quite a lot negative, but the buy momentum that was identified was enough to make this transaction positive. And if we look at what happened to this transaction, there's the actual transaction. It was then topped up again, and in spite of that actually being a sell signal, because it's a continuation of the existing one, the EA ignores any other signals that occur while there is an active trade. Very important to realize that. So we are in a buy. It ignores all the other signals and will top up as instructed. So there it was instructed to top up there, it was instructed to top up there, and topped up over there, and eventually those 4 transactions went nicely positive. As we can see down below on the account, some really nice deals that have gone in there. As you'll also see that the stop was moved up on every top up. The stop was moved up, and the last top up had quite a tight stop, and the price managed to miss that stop and went on and went nicely positive. So coming back to the entry, envelope was touched, the RSI was heavily overbought at a time specified in the EA, and a buy was entered into. Okay, so let's move on to the last signal. Right, so our last signal is the RSI hook signal. Now this signal again applies to settings that where it is specific to the time of day and the amount at which the RSI goes overbought or oversold. So on your screen you can see a buy transaction that has occurred there. And if we look down that buy signal, you can see a hook that has occurred in a quite oversold environment. So there's a small hook, it's not a big one, but it's enough to be a hook in a highly oversold environment, and that then generated that buy transaction. You can see it did go negative, so these signals aren't perfect, and the transaction topped up once, twice, and here's an example of a transaction that only topped up twice. It then reached the target, and all three of those transactions were positive. As you can see on the account, nicely positive 3 transactions. So those are the 5 entry techniques that you can choose from. What I would suggest is that you optimize the EA to find the best technique that you are comfortable with in the best time frame that you're comfortable with, using the best currency that you are comfortable with. So I hope that's given you a good a feel for how the entry techniques work. They are all quite powerful and are profitable in their own right as standalone techniques, but they can be combined with each other, as we've seen. In other videos, we'll cover the top-up process and also other settings within the EA that help us manage the EA. From me, Alex Ploy, cheerio.